They can use these ancient references to construct a model of the machine 2,000 years later. The design shows one of the first pistons in history.
The piston used by Ctesibius is the first example of a piston. And if we can see one here, it's basically a cylinder with a loose end. And as we move the end in and out, you can see that it compresses the gas inside. When we compress the gas, the molecules of air are being forced close together. The pressure is increased and they're desperate to get away from each other. This creates a force acting on the piston, trying to return it to its original position. If we release the piston, you can see that it pops straight back out.
But will an early piston have enough power to launch a missile? Richard Windley has created a replica of the machine, first seen in the deserts of Egypt thousands of years ago.
The arm from the piston comes out here, so that's the kind of thrust rod or connecting rod for the piston, and there's a large cam here which is connected to the actual arm of the catapult, which is pivoted a bit further back. As we pull the arms of the catapult, you can just see the cams operating and pushing in the pistons. This is compressing the air and it's giving us effectively a kind of air spring.
This is achieved using only the power of what is all around us, air. The catapult would have shot 35-centimetre bolts with a wooden shaft and an iron tip.
Fantastic, we actually hit the target first time. I was somewhat surprised, in fact, that we got the kind of range that we did. We were getting 40 or 50 yards range with this, and the arrows are flying very, very straight. The actual height or trajectory is a slightly more complex issue, but it would be quite easy to get used to one of these things and probably hit a target of a metre square at 60 or 70 yards.
But if it was such a success, why did piston catapult technology disappear from the history books for so many hundreds of years?
Quite why they didn't use it, I think, is probably due to the fact that they had problems getting an air seal, and that is absolutely crucial, and that kind of unreliability in the field would make soldiers be very, very wary of it as a weapon.
Had they perfected the air seal, the piston catapult would have become the elite catapult of the ancient world, capable of launching projectiles weighing several tons. This is what its successor, the modern piston catapult, does today.
On an aircraft carrier, to launch a fighter plane, they use a steam cannon that actually fires the plane off the end of the aircraft carrier, and that really is sort of taking the idea into its final and most modern form.
It gives us the capability to accelerate aircraft weighing 55,000 pounds from 0 to 165 knots over a 300-foot distance in less than 2.5 seconds.
The principles explored by Ctesibius save military lives every day.
This is the front of the catapult. It's called the battery position. This is where the aircraft gets secured to the shuttle, which is attached to the rest of the catapult. Within the launching engine are power cylinders that run the full length of the catapult. Within the cylinders are pistons that are linked to the shuttle, which are next to the aircraft. When you're ready to fire the catapult, it's a programmed opening of the launch valve, which admits steam into the cylinders, pushes the pistons forward. When it gets to the end of the power stroke, the aircraft is permitted to continue flying.
The idea of the piston was too good to abandon, but some ancient technologies were so bizarre, they seem utterly impractical. Ancient notebooks reveal a strange sketch of a horse. The horse has long been seen as a powerful weapon. For centuries, nothing evoked as much fear in a soldier as an enemy cavalry charge. Then someone had the idea of attaching two 6-meter spears. Did it turn the horse into a living torpedo or lead to a battlefield disaster? To find out, researchers must look for the inventor's original surviving blueprints. The Biblioteca Comunale Library in Siena contains hundreds of pages of plans and notes by medieval military engineers. One of these was Takola.
Takola is clearly very inventive, did these two big manuscripts really showing what he could do. You can open it up and you can say, that's a picture of a machine in the landscape doing what it does.
Mariano Takola was born in 1382, a time of constant war in Renaissance Italy. Many of Takola's drawings were genuine inventions designed to be used, such as the breathing apparatus and the keel breaker. However, some of them were simply made to showcase Takola's imagination.
Some of them are like concept cars at motor shows, they're sort of saying, well, this is advertising what you can do.
The question facing us now is whether this drawing of a horse torpedo was a genuine blueprint for a weapon or simply another drawing in Takola's portfolio.
When we find information about potential weapon systems and we have no idea whether they were used or not, we have to use our creative intelligence. We have to think, is this practical? Is this sensible? Is the person telling the story credible as a witness?
There's only one way to solve the mystery.
If all else fails, there's nothing wrong with building one and testing it.
The starting point of the weapon is the horse.
You've got 400 kilograms of horse, plus rider, plus armour. That's half a ton of weight, travelling at 35 miles an hour. You get hit by that, you don't get up again.
The horse has been terrifying foot soldiers for as long as mankind has been in the saddle.
When the ground shakes and there's that pounding of hooves, it's absolutely terrifying.
But will the addition of two 6-metre-long spears onto this power driver bring strategic benefit?
We've come here to one of the last schools in Europe where they still train battle horses to try Takola's equine torpedo.
Here, horses are trained for stunts in action movies. Henry has been in over 1,000 action stunts. He's used to strange equipment and unusual behaviour. But even he is nervous.
Well, we've got the device on exactly how it's shown in the manuscript, but we're already running into problems. This is the most docile and peaceful warhorse you'll ever find, but he's already uncomfortable with having these bars so close to his nose. If he moves his head, he's striking these trails. And down here, it's digging into the ground. Now that's great on one hand because it's stopping the horse backing up. We only want this to go forwards. We don't want him to ride back into our own army. But it's putting a barrier in front of his nose. To make this horse go towards the enemy, it's going to take something like a burning brand here. Not something we're going to do.
Horses rely on sight to guide them across the battlefield. Takola's weapon places a bar right across the horse's field of vision. A horse that can't see simply stops charging.
It's deeply problematic. The whole thing will grind to a halt.
The only potential for this device to work is if you're willing to sacrifice a horse. Now, in a time with no antibiotics, any horse injured in battle is going to die from infection. So they've got a supply of horses that they might be willing to throw away. Doing that, strapping this on, and then lighting a fire at the horse's backside, maybe you've got a weapon.
It seems the horse is an effective weapon with no need of accessorizing. In the ancient world, nothing was more terrifying than a cavalry charge. It struck fear into the heart of every army. And as time wore on, inventors were forced to seek newer, more advanced means of stopping attacking cavalry. Julius Africanus, a military strategist and historian born in Jerusalem, wrote a treatise advising the Roman emperor on tactics to adopt for his Persian War in 232 AD. He described a macabre device designed to drive horses mad by spraying a deadly poison into their faces.
They'd be blinded, their noses would be stinging, their skin would be burning, and the riders would lose all control of the horses and thus lose their military efficiency.
Africanus writes of a poison that is superior to all other methods of attack, more effective than even arrows. He does not specify the drug used, but past historians have suggested that the most likely source of the poison is the plant known as the euphorbia. However, no practical investigations have ever been carried out to determine whether this is true. Until now. Kew Gardens is world-renowned for plant toxicology. Here, Professor Monique Simmons believes the active toxic ingredients are in the sap of the plant, in this species known as the latex.
If this latex gets into your eyes, it is incredibly painful.
Latex is the milky sap found in many plants, such as dandelions. Not all forms of latex are poisonous. However, that found in the euphorbia species usually is. To test the toxins in the euphorbia plant, Monique must prepare a sample of the ingredients. The resulting compound can be tested in a machine known as a mass spectrometer.
This machine helps separate them and gives us kind of a profile of the compounds that are present.
Monique is searching for highly toxic substances known as esters. An ester is a complex organic compound found in a variety of toxins, such as those found in shellfish.
We can see some here, and it looks like that these actually could be some of the esters that are associated with the toxicity. So if it was fired into the face of a horse, that would have been a really nasty irritant.
The evidence suggests euphorbia is the culprit. Now Richard Windley is looking into how this horrible agent was delivered to the horses.
We think that one of the methods they may have used was to use a device which was probably commonly known, which was a kind of siphon pump.
Richard wants to investigate whether the siphon can direct the poison at the horse and, most importantly, away from himself. From Africanus's text, we know that this gun was deployed by men placed within the front line. Once the enemy had reached them, they sprayed the poison into the noses of the horses. The animals would go mad and throw off their riders, who, encumbered by their heavy armor, made easy targets.
Well, that was a really interesting experiment. We know how toxic this sap is from sort of laboratory experiments, and now I think we've proved that we've got a delivery system that will project this stuff at least, 20 to 30 feet. The difficult thing is, and it's always the case with poison weapons, if there's a sudden change in wind direction, you can cause absolute mayhem amongst your own side. So that's obviously something that will have to be taken into account.
In the right hands, and with favourable winds, the horse poisoning gun could have sprayed its deadly contents into the ranks of ancient cavalrymen. But our ancient forebears' understanding of chemistry could produce even more stunning results. Over 2,000 years ago, the Carthaginian general Hannibal led an army of men, horses and elephants across the highest mountain range in the known world, sometimes by going over them, and sometimes, where the cliffs were impassable, by using a secret formula to go through them.
That's got to be one of the most successful experiments I've ever done for ancient discoveries.
Over 2,000 years ago, an invasion force of thousands of men and animals successfully crossed these impressive mountains.
In the ancient world, and right the way through into the modern world, the best ways of defining your country's boundary are by fixed, identifiable geographical boundaries.
Nations rely on these natural boundaries, safe in the knowledge that no sane general would or even could lead a major attacking force over their impossible peaks.
A mountain range is difficult to get through, the altitude is high, it's cold, it's difficult, it's dangerous. It really does impose a huge strategic barrier to the movement of large armies.
In 218 BC, Hannibal led a major invasion force of 80,000 men, 10,000 horses,